Hello and welcome to this Python tutorial series where I'll take you from beginner to proficient in Python programming. My name is Madhur Singh and in this video we are going to talk about one of the most fundamental concepts in programming, that is variables and data types. Think of this lesson as the building blocks for everything you will do in Python. If you are new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you never miss out on our latest tech tutorials. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, before we move on to variables, let's just look at the answer of the question that I asked in the previous video, right? So, I asked you to find the errors in the below codes. So, in that case, I gave you this as a question. So, what is the error over here? It's clearly the indentation part. It should be approximately under the condition part over here, right? The second question, again, it's too much indentation. It should be under the word greet over here. So, that is exactly how it is supposed to be, right? So, in this one also it should be closely enough under this to get this condition of if to be completed, right? So, this was the answers of the previous video. Now, let's move on to variables, right? So, if I would like to ask you what is a variable, so what would you answer, right? So, a variable is basically like a container, right? Imagine you have a box where you can store things like number, name, list. So, what it exactly does, it saves the particular thing that you are typing to that number, right, or to that variable. So, for example, in programming we use variables to store information that we can use later, right? So, it's basically, if I'm telling you, let's say my name is Madhur. So, I want to save the word Madhur in a sort of variable like an alias name, or let's say I would want to save it as AD. So, Madhur as a string, because it has characters, would be saved as AD in Python. So, that is how it's basically like a container where you can save things. Okay. So, for example, if you want to remember someone's name or store their age, you use a variable. Let's look at how it works. So, it's basically the name Alice over here is stored in name, right? Alice is a string which is basically a sequence of characters. This is also what we will be talking about in this video. Then the number 25, that is stored as age, right? Now, if I have to display something, right? Now, if I ask Python to display the name, it will give us Alice. So, let's have a look in Python itself so that it is much more easier for you. So, here it is. So, the name I have the name Alice I have stored in this name, so which is a string, and the number, the integer 25, the age I have stored in the age variable. So, now if I execute this part and now if I write print name and execute it again, it was shift plus enter. So, the name that comes up is Alice. So, now the system or the Jupyter notebook, Python itself knows that Alice is stored in name. So, whenever I have to call this variable up, I'll call it by name itself. I would not have to input Alice every single time because it is already stored in this variable called name. So, here again, as it is, name is the variable holding Alice, age is holding 25, it's as simple as that. So, you can assign a value to a variable using the equality sign over here, right. So, if you use equal to, it will save it in this particular variable. So, moving on, next is what are data types. Now, in Python, variables can store different types of data, okay. So, these types include numbers, it can be text which are also called strings, it can be list, it can be tuples and dictionaries. So, understanding data types is essential because it helps Python understand how to handle the information, that how the user is setting an input to it, what the user is giving it. So, that is how it is done. So, data types is defined as a type of data that can be stored and manipulated within a program. So, each data, what are the different types, what kind of values can be stored, that is basically numbers, text, etc. what operations can be performed on the data, right? We call it operations that happen, mathematical operations, be it arithmetic, be it logical. We'll talk that in the next video. Then comes how the data is stored, the memory, the size and the structure, and how much memory does that data, the input data, it occupies. So all these things are basic sense of what data types are. So let's break them down one by one. The first element that we have is numbers. So the numbers, they have two elements to it, that is integers and floats. What are they? So Python can store basically two main types of numbers, integers and floats. So integers are whole numbers, like what we have learned growing up in school. It is from minus infinity to plus infinity, all the whole numbers. Then comes float. So floats are basically numbers with decimals like 3.14, 4.17, 0.5. So any point numbers that we have, right, the decimal numbers we have, that comes under float, right? So it's incredibly helpful when you have a data set, let's say, and you want to analyze that data set. So how would you analyze the data set? What data type you would have? You would take those data type and manipulate it in some way, as in how your problem statement is. So there is where you would actually need to have what type of values are input in different columns of the data set that you have, right? Are these integers? Are these floats? If they are floats, what are the ways in which you can analyze that particular data is what you would be looking at in the practical use cases of identifying these data types. So we can do one thing, we can write this in Python itself. Let's do this exercise of how the numbers are there. So I will store a value, let's say 10, in the repeat. I'll store the value 10 in the variable x, and let's say I'll take a float value, let's say 3.5, and then what I do is I just sum them, right? So sum is basically addition, so adding two numbers with a plus sign, right? So I'll just write sum, let's just give it as result, then type equal to, and now again, as I mentioned, that I don't have to particularly name it, right? I don't have to write 10 plus 3.5, it is already stored in the variable x and y, right? So I don't need to do any of it. And then if I just have to print, I'll just print sum underscore result, in which I have stored the values of x plus y, right? So now let's see what we get. Executed, shift plus enter, and there we go. 10 plus 3.5 is 13.5. So this is how easy it is. Python is again as considered as one of the most easiest languages to learn, and also with the most amount of use cases, right? You can use Python in developing absolutely everything, from software development to data analysis. Absolutely anything and everything can be done using Python. So it's very versatile in that scenario. So it is very seamless integration that we have, right? So the next type that we are talking about is strings. So a string is simply a sequence of characters, okay? So think of it like a sentence or a word. You can store anything between quotes like names, phrases, or even entire paragraphs, right? So again, let's run this particular program in Python. So what I'll do is, hello world is what we started with. So I'll give it a variable name to it. I'll write greeting. Then I'll save the hello world in this particular variable, that is greeting. So I'll write hello world, right? Then what I'll do is I'll just print it, print greeting. So as you would have seen that if we are defining strings, we use double quotes or single quotes to define strings, right? So strings are also incredibly versatile, and you can do a lot with them, like combining them, slicing them, or even repeating them, right? So I'll just type in the entire variable that we have stored in, and then shift plus enter, and again hello world is executed. So again, the main purpose for me to tell you what variable is that we'll be using it heavily going forward, in which we'll save our data in a variable and then keep calling that variable throughout the code wherever we are using it. That's the end point of using the variable. So the next set that we are talking about is lists. So what are these? So now let's move on to lists. So what is it? A list is basically a collection of items that are stored in a specific order. So imagine a list to be like a shopping list. You have apples, bananas, orange in a list, and Python allows you to store them in one variable. How to do that? I will show you this particular code in Python. So one important aspect about list is that lists are defined using square brackets. So that's the definition of it. Whenever you have to input a list, you have to use square brackets. So I mentioned about fruits, so I'll just take the example of fruits and I'll call my variable as fruits itself. I'll start off with the square bracket. Then since apple, banana and orange, right, that is a string, so it has to come under the inverted commas. So apple, inverted commas, close. So to define a list, I just separated them by a comma. So comma, again inverted commas, banana, inverted commas, close, again comma, inverted commas, orange, right. Now closing the square brackets, now I will write print fruits, right. Now if I press shift plus enter, it gives me the list that is apple, banana and orange, right. So this is exactly what comes up when you use list. So you can store any type of data in a list, which is, let's say I use string right now, but you can use numbers, strings or even other lists. So lists are quite flexible and you can add, remove or change the elements in them as in how you feel it to be, right. So that is upon you what you want to do. The next element that comes up is tuples. So tuples are very similar to list, okay, but with one key difference, that is tuples are immutable. What does this means? There's this key term. So basically once you create a tuple, you can't change it, and think of it as a snapshot. Once it's taken, it cannot be altered. So it's basically that it's a fixed thing, you can't change anything in that, it will remain what it is throughout. So it is used with single parenthesis basically. You don't have to use square brackets in this case as was the case in lists. So what I'll do is I'll save this particular one, I'll use coordinates, right. So coordinates I will write as a variable name equal to, now I want to store, let's say 10 comma 20 in them, right. Then I'll just print the coordinates. So I'll just print the coordinates, just coordinate. Also the variable is case sensitive. So if you're using coordinate, use coordinate, do not add or subtract anything, it is case sensitive. So it will show an error if you use, let's say if I just misspell it even once, it will just show me an error. So don't do that. Make sure the variable name that you have input you use throughout the code, right. This is just one line codes that we are talking about. But in the long run, when you are doing a big analysis of, let's say, a data set of 3 lakh, 4 lakh rows, in that case, you have to keep calling a variable in, right? And you cannot get your variable wrong, because even once in the code you get it wrong, it will just show an error and you won't be able to execute any other code further. So this is all about tuples. It's immutable, you cannot change it. But tuples are useful when you want to ensure that the data, right, it remains constant throughout your program. You don't want to alter it in any way possible, right. So even if you try to even modify your tuple, right, it will show an error to you at the end. So make sure that you are not using it. Number one, use it when you know that, okay, these are the values that would not change throughout the code, when you are 100% sure about it, right. But I would suggest you to not use tuple that much. Go for list instead, or just make list instead, that would be better. So the next element is dictionaries. So let's finally talk about dictionaries. A dictionary is basic in Python. Repeat, a dictionary in Python is like a real life dictionary itself, okay. Just instead of words and definition, it stores key value pairs. What is key value pairs? I'll just tell you, I'll show it to you in the code itself. The key is like a word, okay, and the value is like a definition. So how we used to write, right, Alice in name and 25 in age, right, in the numbers data type when we talked about it, similar to that, but this would be under something, right? So I'll just show it to you how what I'm talking about. So Alice is stored in name, 25 is stored in age, New York is stored in city, but the entire thing is the variable name person. So now when I call one element of this, so it's a dictionary, I call out one element of it name, it will give me just that part of it and it would not display me the entire things in this parenthesis. That's the whole part. The curly braces over here are used, right? So dictionaries are defined using curly braces. That's one key element to it, right? So let's go and let's run this program. So I'll write person equal to, then open parenthesis, then I'll just press enter. Don't worry about the error, it would come because I just entered shift plus enter, that's the reason the error is coming. Don't bother about the case, right? Also in between this, if you have to move, right, just like how I'm moving from in to out, you can do it using simply pressing enter, then it'll just go switch on to the next line. 25, right? Okay, when you are defining in dictionary, make sure you're using this element over here, right? Because that's how it remembers that this 25 is stored in age inside a dictionary, right? In other cases, what we used to do is, basically do is put an equal to sign, right? But when we are defining it inside a dictionary, then we use this gap in between, and then I will just, then if I have to print this, I'll just print, let's say I want to print again inside of person. So the first thing that this command will look at is from where we are getting it. We are getting it from person. What in person? Then we'll have to define it in square brackets, okay? That's the nomenclature. So name, close square bracket, close parenthesis, and then press shift plus enter. So here I have to write this parenthesis, right? That's why it was showing an error. I'll just push shift plus enter. Now it gives me Alice, right? So its dictionary is exactly how you use it, right? You open the dictionary, go to the word that is there that you want to find. How would you find the word? If it starts from the letter S, you navigate S first and then you will search the name in it, right? Similarly, in this case also, it goes first in person, how it would execute it. It will go in person, so that is the variable. It will search the name one in this particular variable, and wherever the Alice is there that is stored in name is what is displayed at the end, right? So it is really used when you have a lot of different type of data and you want to navigate to that data quickly, is where you would use dictionary predominantly. So in this example, the person dictionary stores information about a person. You can access a value by using its key like person and name, as we mentioned over here, right? So this was all about what data types were. It was a very quick video on what data types are. I hope now you are clear with exactly what are the different types of data types that we have. So variables are containers for storing data. Data types include numbers, strings, lists, tuples and dictionaries. Predominantly, this is what you would be using. Then lists are mutable, it can be changed, but tuples are immutable. You cannot change the value throughout the code once you have input it, right? Then dictionaries use key value pairs that we mentioned, like name and Alice, inside a variable called person that we used in the previous code for storing related information, right? So again, in this video I have a small exercise for you. Right now, with all the data types that you know and what you also know what a variable is, now create a Python script that does the following. Number one, create a variable student that stores a dictionary with the student's name, age and a list of their favorite subjects. Okay, got the assignment? Then print the student's name. So in that particular dictionary, you want to display the student's name, right? Basic hint, go to the latest code that I just wrote a few minutes ago. Just look at that and do accordingly. Add a new subject to the list of favorite subjects and print the updated list, right? So I would want your answers in the comments box, how you have done it. I would want to know your views, how you have executed the code. The answer to this code I would be giving you in the next video. For the answer, you would have to go to the next video and watch that. At the start of that video, I would give the answer to this particular question. If you're learning to code, you're probably someone who wants to be the master of tech world. Join our job linked data science and AI advanced bootcamp at upGrad and gain the skills employers are looking for. With a practical industry aligned curriculum and hands-on project, you'll not only learn from seasoned experts but also apply your knowledge to real world scenarios. So don't miss out. Click the link in the description to start your data science journey today. Practice makes perfect. So take some time to play around with these examples and try creating your own variables and data structures. In the next lesson, we'll dive deeper into the types of operators, that is arithmetic, comparison, logical operators. We do believe that every individual has a unique path to success, and sometimes all it takes is a little guidance to unlock your full potential. Our expert career advisors are ready to help you discover the path that is perfect for you. Don't miss out on this chance to invest in your future. Click the link in the description below to book your free counseling session now, and let's build the career you've always dreamed of. See you next time.